And welcome in Pete Prisco from CBS Sports. Pete, what's going on, man? How you doing?
What's up, guys? How are you?
Doing good, man.
We're doing great. So, Pete, the last time I saw you was in Miami after Commanders Dolphins practice, and the brief conversation we had when we were standing there with Spielman was how impressed you were by Jayden Daniels.
Love Jayden Daniels. I thought he was the best quarterback in this draft class, better than Caleb Williams. And part of that is I love the kid's demeanor. I love the way he works at it. To me, he has that alpha male you want from the quarterback, the guy that's going to command the huddle. And by the way, when you watch him practice, you can watch him on tape all you want, but when you watch him practice, man, that football gets on the receiver in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the things that showed up to me when I watched him that day. But more than that, I love this tape. I think the Washington Commanders have their quarterback for the next decade, and they need not worry about it.
Pete, you look at this game against Tampa, and Todd Bowles will come out blitz as soon as he gets out of the locker room. Does Jayden's demeanor and the way he plays the game help him out a lot with that blitz that's coming at him?
Well, the fact that he can move the way he moves will make that concerning as well. If you know how that is. If they turn their back on him and play man-to-man and they blitz him and he gets outside the pocket, he's going to create with his legs. Now, he has to learn how to slide. He's not a big guy. And in the NFL, that can be hazardous to your health. But I do think the legs are concerning. You have to, change the way you play him a little bit because he can move. But look, the kid lives it. You guys know. You know the stories. He's the first guy in, the last guy out. He's been that way since he was that way at LSU. I watched him at Arizona State. I'm a Sun Devil. I went to ASU. He was not good at Arizona State. He's the most improved player I've ever seen in my life covering this league. And I think that's a tribute to his work ethic. It's a tribute to him as a quarterback. He is going to be a big-time star, and I don't think those blitzes will bother him because I think he'll be prepared for them.
He gets the ball out pretty damn fast, too, which I think will help. What do you think about I feel like for Washington, there's so much excitement around Jayden, around Adam Peters. Peters had a lot of opportunities to leave and kind of turned him down until this one. What do you think about everything Washington has going now, kind of big picture?
And a new owner. And that's important too. That's important too. And I think it's all new, which is strange that, the offensive coordinator in Detroit turned down the job or turned down the opportunity to take the job. I think it was a great opportunity. Can you get anything better than a new owner, a legacy franchise, a high first-round pick, and a new general manager? Is it going to be any better than that? No. That was strange that he turned it down. So good for Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn's a good man. He's a good football coach. And, look, I love their draft. You look at their draft. It starts with Daniels, but Mikey Sanderson's a good football player. When Newton gets on the field, he's a really good football player. The Coleman, the tackle's going to be a player. McCaffrey's a good receiver. It's not. They had a really good draft, and that's a good sign because that's how you build your team.
For sure. I think it's exciting, and we'll kind of see. What do you think, though, for this year? I do think this roster has a lot of holes. I think they could be way better from last year, but we're still talking about like 7 wins. Does that kind of mess?
Yeah, that's about right. Maybe get to 8 because you can start with the concerns. The left tackle, is a major concern. If you start the rookie, that's a concern, and so he's going to be a good player, but he might have his growing pains.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the line, look, you got some stopgaps in there. Allegretti's a fighter. He's a battler. He'll battle you, but he's not a great physical player, but he's a battler. That's a good thing. I think when you go to the defensive side of the ball, there's a lot of, veterans on that group. They went out and got guys they knew. And sometimes you do that to kind of ease the transition. And it makes it easier that way. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're, the best players, but they went and got guys they knew. And I think that will help them. But, there's questions on the corner. You know that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a major concern. And can those guys hold up? So I do think there are issues that will keep them from being a playoff team, but they're coming. Keep an eye on them.
Pete, you've covered this league for a long time, and I know every player to a man will say, I don't worry about stuff off the field. We don't worry about ownership. But it affects play. When everything is messed up at the top, it affects play. Have you seen teams where when they change up something or get a new coaching staff or a front office in to where it changes the play on the field as well?
Brian, I think part of that comes from winning. And, if you change the general manager and you change the culture by getting better players, I mean, this is a players' league. Everybody always talks about the culture in the locker room, and it's great to have the quarterback who's the first guy in and the last guy out. He kind of sets the tone for everybody. But if that quarterback's the first guy in and last guy out and he stinks, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to. It's all about players. If you draft and develop and make the players the focal point of the team, and the team has success, then that's when you have a good culture. Everybody always talks about that. We'll build a good culture. If you're four-win team, you're not building a good culture. And so I think it all starts with the players. And I think that's why this draft going forward will be the foundation of this team for a long time.
Well, to that point, I mean, I remember here in Washington, there was a year Mike Shanahan said he would stake his professional reputation on John Beck as a quarterback because John Beck does all the things the right way. And John Beck has found some tremendous success now as a quarterback's coach, but he was not an NFL quarterback. You know what I mean? Like you could do everything right and put all the work in and still just not be good. And I think that's a really good point about culture and everything else. Kansas City has had their share of ups and downs and issues with players, but they win, so that culture is great.
Right, and they have a Hall of Fame coach and a Hall of Fame quarterback. That helps. That's
sure.
That's the start of it. That's where you get that thing going. But if you look at it, Dan Quinn's second job, not unlike Andy Reid, and now he has his quarterback. So if you're Washington, you could take a look at that Kansas City situation and hope like heck that's what you have, because I do think Dan Quinn's a good coach and a really good coach, and I think Jayden Daniels is going to be special. I'm not going to say he's going to be Mahomes, but he's going to be a special quarterback. So take a peek at that, and to give you an idea, if it works, that's the kind of situation you'll have. If you have the quarterback, you have sustainable success for a long time, period. End of story. It's just like go to Buffalo. Everybody talks about the window closing in Buffalo. No, it's not. Josh Allen keeps the window open. As long as you have a star quarterback, the window will be open. If you don't, you might have those aberration seasons. Remember the Tennessee Titans when they had Derrick Henry, they ran the ball, they did this, they did that, they hung around. They had the aberration season. When Jacksonville went to the championship game with Blake Bortles, that was an aberration season. You'll have those pop up once in a while. But to have sustainable success in the NFL, you need a franchise quarterback. I firmly believe that.
You've watched Jayden since Arizona State, and when you look at him and you say he's the most improved player you've seen in all of football, looking at him now, if he had a very good season, a great season compared to a rookie, what do you think that would look like?
I think he could, okay, let's go. I'm going to give you C.J. Stroud's great season a year ago. Okay. We rave about, and I love C.J. Stroud. We rave about him. You know how many touchdown passes he threw? 23. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like he threw, Marino numbers. It wasn't, he threw 23 touchdowns. So if Jayden Daniels throws 27 touchdown passes, that's a great rookie season. It's a great rookie season. And I think, by the way, I think he can get to that. So, but again, we gotta put expectations on. He's going to turn the ball over at times. There's going to be things that fool him. Things that fool him in a game in September won't fool him in a game in December, and they certainly won't fool him in a game next September. And that's why playing for these guys is so important. I think you have to play these rookie quarterbacks and get on with it. Everybody always says, well, what about the psyche of the kid? Well, if the psyche of the kid is ruined by having a bad game or bad games or a bad season, then you drafted the wrong guy in the first place.
I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah, for sure. Talking with Pete Prisco here from CBS Sports. You can follow him at Prisco CBS. I did see you've got your first picks of the week column. I imagine you got to be fired up just to get to write your week one picks column. Let's start tonight. It's a big one. Ravens going to Kansas City. What do you think happens?
I think the Chiefs will win that game at home. And remember last year they lost that opener at home, but they didn't have Kelsey. And that's it changes the dynamic of the way they play offense. Not only that, last year was the year to get them. I don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl because I think three-peating is too tough to do. They're so, and when you play all those extra games in the postseason, that wears on you. Your body gets worn down a little bit. And so 2 straight years to do that, and now you're trying to do it a third time. I think that's too tough, but they're going to be a better team than they were a year ago, in large part because the offense will be better. They struggled to get the ball down the field. Worthy will help them open up the offense. When they get Hollywood Brown back, he will help open up the offense. So they'll be better as a team, but I don't think they're going to repeat. They'll win tonight, though.
I mean, three-peat would be unprecedented, really.
Packers,
Tomorrow night.
The last one was the Packers, and that was before the Super Bowl era. So it's been a while. Never happened during the Super Bowl era.
That's crazy.
Long time.
Speaking of the Packers, they're on tomorrow night from Brazil. This game seems kind of wild. There's a lot of moving parts, NFL security, all this stuff. When they actually get on the field to play, what do you expect to happen? And kind of what do you expect from those two teams?
I love the Packers. They're my Super Bowl pick, by the way. I'm
really?
in the minority on that one. I love that team. Yeah, I always look for ascending teams that made a push a year ago that have a quarterback. And you look at what they did last year. They pushed the 49ers in that game and probably had a legitimate chance to win that game. Bunch of kids. And now you take that experience, and all those kids have grown up. And you look at the receiving group. Everybody says, well, what about those guys didn't play together last year much, and they still were able to have success. Christian Watson was in and out of the lineup with a hamstring issue. The other guys were banged up in and out of the lineup. Well, now they're all together, and they have that tight end, and Musgrave. He's going to be a big force for them too. The offensive line will be better, but more than that, defensively, they changed the way they play. They go get Jeff Hafley from Boston College. They will be much more aggressive, which I think suits their personnel. You add a guy like Xavier McKinney on the back end. I love the Packers. I think the Packers are going to have a big-time season. I think they open with a win against the Eagles.
I do too, actually. I really like them. What do you think of Philly? Not specific tomorrow night, but they, over the last two seasons, have looked like absolutely the best team in football. They get to a Super Bowl. Last year, they started hot and just completely fell apart. You wonder about the Hurts-Sirianni dynamic. What the hell's going on in Philly?
Well, you also had a coach who changed coordinators, and usually that's a sign of he's worried. You know, when coaches start changing coordinators, they start looking around saying, okay, it's not me, let's blame the coordinator. So there's concern there. You know, Kellen Moore brings a new offense. It'll change a little bit with him and Jalen Hurts. We'll have to see how that goes. No Kelsey in the middle of that line. I mean, the center's, he's a Hall of Fame center, and now you're replacing him with a guy who hasn't been a starter. That's a concern. And then you flip to the defense. I mean, they were dreadful on defense last year. Awful. You know, 31st, I think, in three major categories. You can't win, particularly pass defense. You can't win that way. So how they respond with Vic Fangio as defensive coordinator, they have a bunch of new guys in the secondary. You know that they're going to start rookies. One rookie for sure, and maybe another down the road at corner. That's always a concern. So they do have issues. And you mentioned the Sirianni, Hurts situation. How does that play out? So I'm concerned a little bit about the Eagles. I think they'll be okay. I don't think they're going to be, one of those teams that rips through the league like we saw them do early last season.
But you said that you think highly of Jayden, but they're going down to play against Tampa. How do you think that game turns out?
I love Tampa's team, by the way. I think Tampa wins that game. By the way, you guys have some heat up there. I live in Florida. You have no idea. You guys were in Miami that day. Miami's a little cooler than Tampa. It's cool because I live down here in South Florida. Miami's much cooler because the breeze blows. Tampa's hot, and that's going to be hot. And I think that's going to be a factor. But that Tampa team, you realize they've kept every draft pick the last 2 years. You talk about a team that's retooled by drafting well. They have a great mix of young and old. I mean, you have Mike Evans, you have Levante David, veterans, Antoine Winfield, veterans that can lead the young guys. And more than that, Vita Vea played at 400 pounds last year. He's down to 360. He's going to be back to being a power player on defense. I think, Cansey's going to be a big-time player. Yaya Diaby was outstanding as a rookie. He got dinged up in camp, but he's back. I love their team. I think they're the best team in that division, and I think that's going to be a tough game for the Commanders.
Yeah, I think Tampa's pretty loaded, and I think it's tough to start on the road with a team that was really firing on all cylinders kind of late last season and then largely brought everybody back together. Pete, we've kind of talked plenty about Washington. You gave us your Philly update. Can we just fill out the rest of the NFC East here? Let's go to New York, where a lot of things seem to be up in the air for this Giants team.
Well, a lot of pressure on the coach and general manager. I mean, there's no question about that. And
Hard Knocks did him no favors.
Yeah, adding Neighbors, it didn't. Adding Neighbors is big time for them. I mean, he's a big time player. Their weapons are good. It just becomes, can they protect? Because their offensive line had been dreadful, but they went out and they added some guys, three new starters on that offensive line. If they can protect and Daniel Jones can hold up, then I think they'll be okay on offense. Defensively, you go get Burns, and now all of a sudden you got Thibodeau and Burns and Lawrence in the middle. That's a pretty good front. But
yeah.
I think they're the fourth team in the division. I really do. They'll be tough to beat week in and week out, but I don't know if they're going to win a lot of games. I mean, maybe 5. I don't think to see them winning, being a playoff team or winning 9-8 games. I think they're the fourth team in the division. And
then what about the damn Dallas Cowboys?
I think the Cowboys are the best team in the division. I do. And, they're all in stuff and this and that. Look, the Dak Prescott contract situation isn't a great thing going into the season. I think ideally they would love to get him signed. But, this is a prove-it year for him. I mean, he's going to be he led the league in touchdown passes last year. People forget that. They got some youngsters on the offensive line, but they're good players. I have no problem starting good offensive linemen who are youngsters if they can hold up. And I think both those guys can hold up. And then they have playmakers. Defensively, getting Mike Zimmer's big for them. They will be much more aggressive. And I think when you look at the way they played last year, they kind of miscast Mozzie Smith. They added some bigger guys in there. Remember, teams ran on them late in the season. They got running, went to Buffalo and got run on. You have to stop the run. Once they stop the run, and I think they'll be better at it this year, watch out for Micah Parsons, because I think in Mike Zimmer's defense, he's going to lead the league in sacks this year.
Wow. I mean, he's got the talent, and then he's already looking for a deal. So that'd be pretty fascinating.
He'll get one. Believe me.
Any big upsets you like this weekend? I mean,
I like a lot of upsets this week. I think the Colts beat the Texans at home. Remember, they should have beat them in the final week of the season, and with Gardner Minshew, and now they get Richardson back, and they're a better team. So I think the Texans is being a little overhyped. That's a young group. They add Diggs and Daniil Hunter and guys like that, but how often do we see the team that adds big time players win? So they might be one of those teams that they'll be good, but they play a tough schedule. So I think the Colts win this week. I'm trying to think of some of the other upsets. I think Jacksonville wins at Miami. I think, by the way, that game's going to be really high scoring. I'd be shocked if it's not, in the high 50s, because I think both teams will be able to score points. Upset wise, I'm trying to think of some other ones I picked. Which other ones did I pick? I picked the Giants to actually beat the Vikings. All the Sam Darnold talk. Give me a break. I mean,
our producer totally agree with you on that.
Yeah.
This is usually a league where you are what you are. I mean, you are what you are, and rarely does it change. So I'll take the Giants in that game too.
I agree with you. I listen. I don't know what Daniel Jones is, but their defensive line is really good, and Sam Darnold is playing a game in the Meadowlands. Give me the defensive line in that. Pete,
and
I really appreciate.
Titans will hang around, by the way, with the Bears. I love Will Levis. I think he's going to be a star. I think the Titans hang with the Bears. That'll be close. I don't know if they'll win the game, but that'll be close.
All right,
love it. Hey, Pete, thank you so much for the time, man. Really enjoyed it.
Hey, when we get Brian Mitchell in the Hall of Fame?
Hey,
2028.
Don't you know those people that do those voting?
I do, but I've tried so many. I got Baselli in. Now trying to get Fred Taylor in for whatever, because I was in Jacksonville all those years. For whatever reason, they won't put Fred Taylor in. They have no earthly idea how great that guy was.
Fred was a bad boy, man.
Well, here's what we'll do,
by
Pete.
The way, Devin Hester's punt return average was less than Gunnar Olszewski. So I do it just to put that out there. I want Brian Mitchell in the Hall of Fame.
When the veterans, at this point, he's got to wait for the Veterans Committee in 28, and we're going to have a big old push, and we'll be calling you, man.
You got it.
All right, man. Appreciate that.
If I'm still alive by then.
I think you will be. You look great in Miami. You'll be fine.
Thanks, guys.
All right, brother.